Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nordic Sound channel. We are going to keep this long overdue album review train rolling here with the beloved Runahild's new album of Darkness and Light. Now, the name of the game with this album is, I think, a raw personal lyricism mixed with some daring new use of electronica, right? So, it takes that more typical Runahild sound that we all love and essentially adds piano with more lyrical singing, because the lyrics, at least to me, seem to be much more front and center here than in previous albums. A lot more poetry, a lot more personal experience, a lot more expression and attention are being given to the lyrics, so it makes sense that the singing for those lyrics would have a more lyrical approach as well. Now, that daring use of electronica is particularly with the beats, and if you were to have told me, hey, Runahild's doing a new album that has way more attention on electronica beats, I might have been a little hesitant, but because I didn't actually know anything going into it, I was taken by surprise completely in probably the best way possible, because the electronica elements of this album, I'm not a huge electronica guy, I think that's obvious from the lack of electronica that I talk about on this channel. Those beats ended up really carrying the album for me and made it a pretty distinct experience from the rest of Runahild's albums. And then, of course, on top of all of this, there's a lot more overlay tracking and playing with orchestration, synth pads, stuff like that. Again, if I can just sum it all up, it's that you can definitely tell that if with Free Spirit, Runahild was showing a lot more confidence personally, like as a vocalist, I think that with Of Darkness and Light, she's showing a lot more confidence in actually expanding her repertoire of how she approaches composition, songwriting, arrangement, and orchestration. Now, all of this comes together beautifully, starting with the first track, A Whole Universe Within, which starts on a completely unexpected note for Runahild's albums and just her music in general. A rich, warm piano. Now, maybe I'm missing something, but we don't usually associate Runahild's music with a rich, warm piano, but it comes in so organically and sounds so natural to her new approach to songwriting here in Of Darkness and Light. The piano harmonies are like this lush droning thing over a more typical singer-songwriter verse, which is pretty new territory for Runahild as well. And then moving into Mirror of the Soul, it takes a more electronica approach to the typical Runahild style we all love that I sort of alluded to at the beginning. And that beat that kicks in really is infectious. And I was sitting here listening to the album like, oh, I wonder if this is just a one-off thing, having no idea that that electronica beat would sort of be the standard that would sort of thread the whole album together and keep my attention the whole way through. And then combined with that repeated vocal phrase that is that more typical Runahild style that we all know and love, this is one of the standout tracks for me. Super good track. Moving into Shadowwork, the stripped down version, takes a gamble on having two different versions of a song on the same album without either one being presented in a bonus track sort of presentation. We'll talk about why this works when we get to the not stripped down version. This track continues to take that raw lyricism that I talked about at the top of the video and just runs with it, continuing to show, I think, like the breadth and potential of this new style of songwriting for Runahild. Next up, we've got the title track Of Darkness and Light. Again, as someone who's not an electronica person typically, I'm just really surprised at how well this is all working even for me, right? The electronica beats are not only working well with the established Runahild style, but they continue to, I think the best way to put it is that they add a certain presence or energy to her more typical melancholic atmospheric sound that just fits together so perfectly to just organically expand her potential sound as an artist. And that's on full display in the title track Of Darkness and Light. Now, In Between Worlds starts with pure electronica in a way that makes me think like I'm sitting at a loading screen for a beautiful indie game like Ori and the Blind Forest. And trust me, I mean this only as a good thing. I know at face value, loading screen music doesn't sound like a great compliment, but if I associate it with like a really good indie game, trust me, that's the atmosphere, and it's beautiful, right? That's what I'm getting at. And when that double time drum kicks in about 6 minutes through, when Runahild goes full, well, Runahild, it just had me like the What Is Love guys in A Night at the Roxbury. I was just sitting there bobbing my head to the side. It's just a great track too. And then Shadow Work, not the stripped down version, shows just how far orchestration and arrangement can go in completely changing the tone and atmosphere of a song. Whereas the stripped down version has like the curtains drawn and Runahild's, sitting at a giant Steinway piano up on the stage, Billy Joel style. This is way more atmospheric and introspective. And again, if you put the two tracks side by side, it's a really good, I think, like teaching moment or a good experiment to see just how much of a difference orchestration and arrangement make, even with just the same tune. Otherworldly, I'm going to use this track to make sure that I say this as clearly as possible. This new style Runahild is playing with, experimenting with between cold, lonely piano and electronica beats with a synth pad overlay. It's just so beautiful. It's new, it's refreshing, it's exciting. I cannot wait to see where she goes with all of this. And that is what Otherworldly is all about. Only made better with her signature vocalizations, which soar over top of these, new things she's mixing in with her music. And bringing it all home in a very poetic twist, a subversion of expectations, Cielefred, after a whole album of Runahild experimenting with having fun with synth pads, beats, and atmosphere through long-form songs ranging from 5 to 9 minutes, she ends the album with a 2-minute stripped-down skeleton vocal-only track reminiscent of like an early hymn, a really artful subversion of expectations to close off just a tremendous album here. So in summary, Of Darkness and Light is, I think, a really important moment in Runahild's career. You guys know I love Runahild. She was my second ever guest I had on this channel. I love keeping up to date with her, and it's just so cool seeing her career like take these twists and turns in just a really awesome way. So proud of you, Runahild, if you're watching. It's really awesome to see what you're doing here. So now I noted the really audible increase in confidence with Free Spirit in my top 10 of 2023 album reviews. And it's just gotten exponentially more noticeable here in Of Darkness and Light. But the reason I think this record in particular is so important is because it shows the blend between new stuff and old stuff, right? There's plenty of what brings us all to a Runahild record, but there's enough to show her that she's still clearly in love with the process. She's in love with the art of making music. If that wasn't obvious enough just from the sheer rate at which this superhuman puts out music, it's crazy. I think she's at a rate of like 1.5 albums per year. So it's just good to see that she's not like getting into a routine. And I mentioned this with the Tear album review too. She's not in a routine of just doing what works. She's including what works, what comes naturally to her, while also clearly wanting to experiment with something new, something that might spice things up and keep that process fun for her. It's an album that succeeds in doing what works while also fearlessly adding electronica into the mix that brings that Gildehall and rave energy from Midgarsblot into a record format. I'm curious if they're related because I know that Runahild took especially well to that Night Hall rave format at Gildehall, and she was an absolute festival favorite for so many people. So yeah, I was really taken by surprise with this record in all of the best ways. I told you if you were to have marketed this to me as a Runahild album that has more electronica in it, I would have been like, all right, I'll give it a listen, but I'm going to be a little hesitant. But no, all of any hesitancy I would have had went right out the window with just how stunning this album is. And I just cannot wait to see where Runahild takes these ideas presented in this album further into the future. Runahild, great job. Hope you all take the time to listen to Of Darkness and Light. It's a real treat. So, thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm going to be keeping this review train running, but next week I'm seeing Amon Amarth at Red Rocks, the 22nd, and then the 23rd, Heilong at Red Rocks. So back to back, and then I drop Alyssa off at the airport bright and early on Thursday for her to take a trip to Florida. So next week gets a little shaky, but I'm going to do my best to really stick to this individual album review format. So thank you guys so much for your support. Thank you for watching. Please check out Runahild's latest album, and I'll catch you later.